Hello, my name is Joe Pellegrini. I graduated in the fall of 2010 with a Bachelor's of Business Administration in Management and Economics. I would like to share why NAU is special to me and why it still holds a piece of my heart, uh, so to speak. So when I was deciding where I wanted to go in 2007, the summer of 2007, I had three universities to choose from. It was Washburn University in Topeka, Kansas, Widener University in Chester, Pennsylvania, and of course NAU, Northern Arizona University. Um, and out of those three, I actually went to an orientation for Northern Arizona University. Uh, I was in their little presentation. They were hyping up the campus. They were hyping up Flagstaff. They were saying that Flagstaff was going to grow huge. They had a good entertainment district in downtown, which they do. They have a lot of shops down there. They have a lot of bars down there. Um, but I wasn't really interested in the presentation. I thought the presentation was almost like a used car salesman. Sorry for that. Uh, a used car salesman presentation. So but I didn't judge the university on their presentation. As we were walking through the campus, I fell in love with it. I fell in love with the atmosphere of the campus. A lot of trees, a lot of green. Something didn't uh, I didn't see in other parts of Arizona. I've been in Arizona since 2003 at this point, and the campus felt like a previous place I lived in, which is Kansas, uh, with a little bit of flavor and some mountains, and I liked that atmosphere and that environment. I looked at many of the buildings. Many of the buildings were pretty. They were nice architecturally, and I just fell in love with the campus. It was huge for compared to, you know, ASU and U of A, at least where you could walk. Uh, and it had a lot of wilderness to it, so it was really interesting. And the college I was looking at was the Frankie College of Business, and I fell in love with that building as well. It was very state of the art at the time, and I thought they had a really good program. It wasn't the best program, but I decided to enroll in the fall of 2007. Uh, my first year was a little bit rough. I was a bit shy. I developed a bond with a resident assistant who became my friend throughout the remainder of my attendance at NAU. Uh, he was a Dallas Cowboys fan. I was a Philadelphia Eagle fan, so it was very interesting. We kind of bantered back and forth. It was fun. He was a really good guy, and I remember him to this day. He was a construction. He was going into construction management, and he was a very nice, very fun guy to be around with. And his name was Chris, and we used to go to lunch together. We would go to certain events together. We used to go to church together when I used to go to church. Uh, we would talk about sports. We would talk about well, not much politics, but sports. What was going on in the campus. Uh, you know, um, Play video games from time to time. Uh, we threw the football. We threw the baseball. Yeah, it was fun times. So that really got me through that bonding between me and the RA uh, was very enlightening. I made a pretty good friend. Um, we made remained friends until we graduated, or until I graduated in the fall of 2010. My second year, I made even more friends, and these friends they weren't in the party scene. In fact, they were very religious. I was going through a phase of did I believe in um, Christ or not believe in Christ. So I hung out with those guys, and even when I got past that phase where I wasn't really into the religious stuff, they were still my friends, and I still had fun with them. Uh, they were a unique type of people that knew how to have fun without the alcohol, and that's what really appealed to me because there was one time we were going to a one of their friends' house, and they had a bunch of board games. I thought, man, board games. I am not gonna like board games. I was never into board games when I was young, and here, lo and behold, I go to this house. Uh, Immediately, it doesn't start out really good. Uh, Settlers Catan, the guy introduced me to that. Man, I kind of fell asleep, to be honest with you. But the other board games were fun. We would get into Monopoly. There was a Star Wars board game as well, and that was fun. Some of the board games I didn't understand how to play it. Risk was another one. I actually played Risk with another group of friends as well, and it was always fun. It was just unique. They had a Halloween party. It was non-alcoholic. Everybody was dressed up, and it was fun. It was almost like going to one of the parties that had alcohol at it or had people intoxicated at it. It was actually better than a party like that because you really got to bond and meet new people in the process. As opposed to talking to somebody not remembering or talking to somebody and them not remembering you, and I thought that was very unique, and I had friends where we would go to the dorm and we would talk for 3 to 4 hours just about politics, sports, current events, things going on throughout the campus, you know. Good-looking girls, stuff like that, and it was very interesting, and I never got bored of that. And these conversations would go 4 o'clock in the morning, and I wouldn't care. I would have class like 5 hours. In 5 hours, I would have to go to like a morning class, and I wouldn't care. It would be like, okay, I'll go to the morning class. I'll have a little bit of sleep. I always found time for sleep in between classes, or even after. Even after, I'd just fall asleep. The same thing went for. I would go to these events, usually ran by a group called InterVarsity. They are a religious group on campus, and I would talk to people there, and then after the event was over, we would go to Starbucks. We'd talk for 2, 3, 4 hours. We would talk either about Jesus, or we would talk about stuff going on campus, or even sports, anything entertainment wise. And it was a very fun conversation. And even when I was out of the religious scene, when I was not trying to find God, it was still interesting just to talk about that stuff. And I would enter into those conversations because it was interesting, and it was very neutral. So, I mean, I bonded with a lot of people there. I bonded with people even towards the end of my career at NAU, or rather, attendance at NAU. I would click with people that I never thought I would click with in the classroom, and this would evolve from different projects that we would be doing together, and I would find certain similarities. Two of us would find certain similarities, and it'd be like, oh, okay, nice, or you would meet somebody that you thought was a total jerk, and it turns out he or she is, oh, wait a minute, you're just like me, and I actually like you, and they like me back, and it was just so enlightening to experience that, because a lot of times you would go into a class, or you'd go into an event and you thought, oh, I can't talk to that person because they're in the sorority. I can't talk to that person because they're a jock. I can't talk to that person because they're in some type of clique or whatever it is. But that wasn't true. And at the end of my college career, I found that the case, and I found it very enlightening and very educational for me, and not to judge people just by their social status. Uh, the professors were awesome. Let me tell you, every professor had a different, unique teaching style, different personality. They weren't all robots. Uh, you could sit down for them for like 2, 3, 4 hours for some of them. Talk about anything. You talk about current events. If they like sports, you would talk about sports. You would talk about philosophy. It was awesome. And then in college, I always considered myself a conservative, but I had this liberal teacher in the College of Business, and me and him hit it off. And I you know I didn't agree with everything that he said. Um, but I liked him as a person. Uh, I liked some views that he had, and I loved his teaching style. His teaching style was very uh, progressive. Um, he would have assignments where we would have uh, well, for instance, the tests. The tests were done in a group setting, and looking back, at first I said, "Oh, okay, this doesn't really make any sense. Why were we doing this?" And then looking back at it, I said, "You know what? That was very interesting, and that was actually it was better for me because I felt like I learned more, even though it was multiple choice and it was in a group setting. I learned more than taking a test with multiple choice without that group. And then later on, I became a student grader for this teacher, and you know, uh, he went to a different format for his tests, and I kind of I'm looking back at it and I'm saying, man, I wish I signed up for that semester with him because what he was doing was it was still a group test, but I believe it was with essays. I'm not too sure. I'm kind of hazy. It's been a while. I graduated in 2010, so it's been a while. But I've had a great. I only think about the positive and the uh, negative experiences I did have at NAU, but I always block that out whenever I think about NAU. I always think about the positives. I always think about the good times. Would I redo NAU again to make it even more positive? No, I would not. I would not trade that for anything. Um, the memories I have for NAU are unique, and that's what makes uh, NAU special to me. Uh, you know, uh, it's the intangibles that I just talked about. It's not that I should have talked to more people. I should have had a girlfriend. I should have had this. I should have had that. Um, you know, and NAU had some of my special. Some of the special things that happened up there was I watched my Philadelphia Phillies win the World Series in 2008 with a bunch of friends, and it was very enlightening, a very fun time. I had a chance to work for the KJAC radio station to analyze and color commentate one game for hockey. I analyzed a couple of games, and I only color commentated for one game for the hockey club up there, and it increased my interest in hockey for me. Uh, Hockey was always a residual sport for me. So the Philadelphia Flyers were either my third or fourth team. Well, I mean, when that happened, that became my second or third team. And I always, to this day, I always hope to see rather NAU have another NCAA hockey team again, and to beat ASU, who has a hockey team now in the NCAA, you know, beat them to shreds. I would love to see that. But another thing NAU had was, like I said earlier, was the architecture of the buildings. It was beautiful. Um, it was almost like looking at art in some of these buildings. They were uniquely shaped. They were uniquely built. And that's one of the reasons why NAU ranks top, one of the top on my list of favorite places to see. Vegas being the top because it has a lot of things changing, and I like looking at that new architecture that Vegas provides. It's not so much the party scene for me in Vegas. It's not even the gambling, you know. But to make a long story short, I loved being up at NAU. Loved the old architecture. Loved the new architecture, and it's an experience I will never forget. I will always have NAU in my heart. I don't necessarily agree with where the campus is going. I feel the campus should stay small, but that's something that has changed, and I don't embrace that change. I don't embrace the expansion, um, but things change. So thank you, NAU, and thank you for all the good times. And you helped to mold me into what I am now, whether that's for best or for worse. And this is why NAU is special to me.